Hello there, welcome. This week I'm going to talk about Biden. I'm going to talk about how Biden will be very different than Trump to deal with China. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, you can do here below on the screen. Subscribe now, and then you can follow all the episodes on Pascal's China Lens. So how's the relationship between China and the US going to change under Biden? Well, if you look at Trump, what we see is that he created four big wars with China. The first one was a trade war, and this started 3 years ago, and as a businessman, he definitely wanted to win that war. And so China, after 2 years, made a lot of concessions in a phase one deal, and they had to pay a lot of tariffs, and that would actually fund the Treasury of America. But if we look later, we look today, it's real clear that China is the winner and the US is the loser. What it means is that the deficit in trade did not go down. Actually, it's the opposite. And a lot of American citizens had to pay for those tariffs because products became more expensive. So not such a good deal, and as a businessman, you could really say that he lost. Now, how's Biden going to deal with it? Instead of doing bilateral deals, he's going to do a lot more multilateral deals. The problem is that over time, the last year specifically, China has been part of a lot of new multilateral deals with Asia, with the RCEP, with Europe, with the CAI. And what we see is that China and the rest of the world is now really intertwined and interconnected. And it's going to be really hard for Biden to lock China out of these multilateral agreements. Now, the second thing is not just this trade war, is the technology war. And what we see there is that Trump was really very harsh on decoupling from China and blocking the Chinese to get innovation and technology from the US. It worked a little bit. I mean, we saw the Huawei debacle. We also saw things like WeChat and TikTok and a lot of companies in the US that in China that didn't get US technology anymore. So that was a big change. But did it really hurt China that much? And how much time did they lose? Well, I made a video which is called the dual circulation strategy, and this is really about explaining how China, because of this situation, has decided to invest even more money, trillions of dollars, into innovation in China, and only work with those partners and countries that are willing to help the Chinese economy grow. So they really are getting a boost in innovation in from the internal side. So I'm not so sure that this whole technology war that America is actually winning right now. Now, Biden's going to be much more careful on it, but I do believe he's going to be much more competitive with China when it comes to innovation and technology. He's not going to create this war and ban China, but he's going to be thinking about how to invest in American technology and American innovation to compete in a more healthy way with China and actually look at it from the inside out. And that's much better, and I think Europe should do the same thing. The problem is that if you look at the problems of the US today, I mean, it's been in decline with GDP compared to China that was growing, and every other country in the world has been negative, which means that where is that money going to come from? And if you look internally in the US and America, you also see that there's a lot of domestic challenges, which means that there's almost a decoupling happening internally in the country. So it's really going to be hard for Biden, an uphill battle to fight that or invest in these companies, invest in innovation in the US to actually compete with China. Now, the third war that America really started with Trump was an ideology war. And this was really all about Pompeo and Trump saying that the Communist Party of China is up to no good. And they're actually a risk for our freedom, our liberal ideas, our democracies. And this was kind of like this old war or old Cold War thinking that they had with the Soviet Union. And so this were the old times. The world has changed. It's interconnected. It's intertwined. We can't do this anymore. But still they had this rhetoric, this narrative. What it created in China is a nationalism. That means that a lot of Chinese now who had America and the West as their example and the dream for the future now are saying like, yeah, but specifically after COVID-19, our system in China is maybe not that bad, and maybe we're doing things right, and we should continue on our course and not just listen to what the US has to say. They shouldn't be our teachers anymore. And so this is creating a different self-awareness. Now, I believe that Biden will look at this very different than Trump. He will understand that those two systems have to coexist, and that China cannot be changed by America, just like China cannot change America. And so that's just a reality. And he will try to coordinate with China, specifically on those areas like healthcare or maybe sustainability, things that are important for the planet. But then on the other hand, when it's not about an importance for the planet, they will be very fierce competitors. Now, the problem is that in the last years, specifically in 2020, China has gained a lot of soft power outside of the West because they were able to help these countries while we in the West were really looking at ourselves and how to help ourselves. We didn't have the time to help other countries and didn't want to invest the money. And still today is the same case. China is taking advantage of us looking away from the rest of the world. The financial new deals that will happen in trade more and more with the renminbi instead of the dollar. You're going to see a change specifically in the countries outside of the West. And that's going to be a new tension and something new to accept for Biden and for America. And it's not going to be easy, but I think Biden will deal with that better than Trump will. The last thing is about hegemony. And this is about the military power and controlling the world through its military power that America has always done. And that is kind of fading away a little bit. So what's going to happen in the future? It's very difficult to say. What we have seen is that the sovereignty of China has become top of the agenda. And Chinese have really said, you America, you in the West, you shouldn't tell us what we should do. You shouldn't tell us how to run our own country. And that's a big change of the narrative and the discussion and the way that they are very vocal with what we sometimes call the wolf warrior aggression from China. And that's all to do with that nationalism, that self-awareness and being proud of what they've achieved. So they're backing everybody out of their region. And that is, of course, difficult for Biden. I believe that's where he will be a lot more tough than Trump. He will be a lot more aware of the situation, which is very sensitive and will be very political and will be about diplomacy. And so he's going to be much more smart, I believe, how to deal with it. But when it comes to human rights and some of the things that America cannot accept from China, he's going to be much more tough than Trump did. The problem is, of course, that in the last years, what we've seen is that Hong Kong, for example, although they were tough, I mean, Biden might have been tougher, but although they were tough, it didn't really change a lot. And if we look at the past of Biden, we also see that under Obama, there's a lot of proxy wars that have been fought all over the world, while Trump wasn't really fighting any wars. So Taiwan is a very big risk for the relationship between China and the rest of the world, between the US and China. So these proxy wars could happen. There could be an incident for which the whole relationship between China and the rest of the world could be completely different if ever something were to happen. So I'm a little bit worried about this part. I think Biden will be much more competitive and he will be much more tough on these issues, which means something could happen which is hard to reverse. On the other hand, I do believe that Biden will be able to manage much better the relationship, will be much less toxic, will be much more pragmatic, and he will also understand how to coexist under two systems and compete and collaborate or coordinate between China and the US in a more healthy way. So I believe, to conclude, that Biden will be able to manage much better the relationship, will be much more pragmatic and diplomatic in doing it. It's not going to be dysfunctional like with Trump. He's going to understand to coexist with China. He's going to be more coordinating with China. But on the other hand, I think Biden will be much more competitive when it comes to technology, fight with China, and also will be much more direct when it comes to human rights and maybe even proxy wars through Taiwan or other regions in Asia. So that's my story for this week. Hope to see you all next week for another episode on Pascal's China Lens.